Hello everyone, Joy here, and it's a wet, dismal day. I'm done up, so let's make a video. So today I am going to be taking the F test. F means fascism. What did you think the F word was relating to, huh? My friend on YouTube here, Sam, his channel's name is Hooligan Comedy. He's currently making a 15-part series on the 14-part Umberto Eco fascism outlines. Oh my god, that's a hard thing. That's a hard one to say. Basically, these videos are great. The channel is criminally undersubscribed, and what he's done is been able to montage a whole bunch of different clippings, news broadcasts, YouTubers, everyone basically sort of outlining what the different points are and how they are in fact going on today as a result of Trump's America. But that's not the point of this video. So in the description of the videos there is a link to take the F test to see how fash you might be. So let's find out. He did warn me this was going to be a bit like a BuzzFeed quiz. So it says here, 70 years ago the authoritarian personality studies attempted to construct an instrument that would yield an estimate of fascist receptivity at the personality level. This interactive F-scale presents that instrument in its final form of 30 questions, computing your aggregate F-score and subscores for the 9 personality variables the F-scale tries to measure. Additional information, including the scoring scheme and an explanation of the personality variables, is given below after the questionnaire. So take the F-scale now, or else. It actually says that. Question 1. Obedience and respect for authority are the most important virtues children should learn. And all of these questions have a sliding scale answer. I'm going to say somewhat disagree, because I think those are important, especially for children to learn, because a lot of the time people will be authoritarian over children for good reasons, but definitely not something that you want to instill in them as a blanket always kind of thing. Actually, I'm gonna go disagree mostly with that. Not disagree somewhat with that. Disagree mostly. Okay. 2. A person who has bad manners, habits, and breeding can hardly expect to get along with decent people. You what? I mean, first of all, bad manners, habits, those are somewhat subjective. I mean, yeah, a society will decide what good habits and bad habits are, and somebody living in that society would be able to tell what those are by the way other people react, by breeding. Ugh, that's... There is no such thing as good breeding or bad breeding, okay? That's a repellent thing to think. And of course, the thing as well about saying getting along with decent people. Well, how do you categorize decent people? Because you could say some, you know, ragamuffin chimney sweep, ancient Victorian fucking stereotype of a British person, because that's all Americans know, and an aristocrat. They probably wouldn't get along, and the aristocrat would probably be considered the decent person, but actually that person is perpetuating this negative kind of society where they are above the other person, the chimney sweep, in stature through capitalism. So I'm gonna fail this F test, but I'm kind of glad I will. So I'm gonna say strongly disagree. I know lots of people, especially nowadays, who do come from very different backgrounds who can still get along quite well. If somebody wants to be ill-mannered and rude, then they're not going to get on with anyone, really, let alone someone this test considers decent. If people would talk less and work more, everybody would be better off. I know some people who should talk less. I know what the question is inferring. Okay, I know what the question is inferring. It is saying that keep your head down, get on with it, and don't, you know, raise issues or questions or anything like that. Just be a good automaton. Which, of course, I radically disagree with. Especially considering that doing a job sometimes requires communication. Especially my job, where I talk with people, with the public, with my co-workers, we discuss things, we need to know things. Like, yeah, we'll talk about like fun stuff, but we will talk about work stuff as well. But even given like that I reject that premise, everybody would be better. I don't think so, because we are social, interactive creatures. We need that in order to function well and be well within ourselves. So I disagree with that completely. On the other sort of flip side, yes, I do think that some people are needlessly talking, needlessly sort of oh god, what's the word when someone is talking to sound pompous and intelligent and they're really not? That's pontificate. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. Number 4, the businessman and the manufacturer are much more important to society than the artist and the professor. What? Okay, so manufacturers are important. Professors are very important. Artists have an important role, but are not as, say, vital as educators or producers to our sort of immediate needs, but they are important to our like intellectual needs. And businessmen, well, I'm sorry, what? First of all, I hate the gendered language, and second of all, what business? Be more specific. Because there's a lot of business out there that's utter bullshit. That is just needless busy work. A lot of people feel like their work is bullshit. And they do it because they get paid to do it and they don't love it. So I'm going to strongly disagree with that, because what the hell does that even mean? Like, businessman, that's such a vague term. Like, which business? I would say people who work in the stock markets are probably business people. And yet they have nothing to do with anything real. Their job is totally fabricated. It's based on a completely fabricated way of looking at wealth and money, and stocks are basically gambling, but with consequences for more people. So I'd say there's not a very important thing to do that. Question 5. Science has its place, but... oh my god. I can't even finish the sentence. Science has its place, but... I just know that's not going to end well. Science has its place, but there are many important things that can never be understood by the human mind. Maybe? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. That doesn't mean that, science shouldn't try to look for the answers. Again, I feel like it's a leading question that's not saying exactly everything that it wants to say, only this time it's more coded in such a way that I think it's leaning towards religion, but I can't be certain. So I'm going to say agree somewhat, just because I think maybe. But it is super vague. 6. Every person should have complete faith in some supernatural power whose decision he obeys without question. Okay, so this is definitely about religion. First of all, again, I hate that gendered language. And second of all, absolutely, strongly disagree. If you have faith in a thing, great, cool, fine. But I don't. I know a lot of people who don't. And we do fine comprehending things. We don't need a supernatural power because there is no proof of that. So why would we bother obeying without question a supernatural power that we can't even prove is there? And why would we believe the words of people who claim to speak for that supernatural being that no one can actually prove? Because they're just as much in the dark as we are. Those people are liars, professionally. And it's been a very lucrative con for them for many millennia now. 7. Young people sometimes get rebellious ideas, but as they grow up, they ought to get over them and settle down. No. No way. I think people who get over their rebellious ideas and settle down become corporate shills. So, strongly disagree. Rebellious ideas can get out of hand, sure. But so can, institutionalized ones. And those are the ones that really run the countries, the systems that we have to live by. And things are way too conservative around here. We need to be, at least inject some semblance of radical beliefs into the way things are run. Because it doesn't represent what everybody wants. Not by a long shot. 8. What this country needs most, more than laws and political programs, is a few courageous, tireless, devoted leaders in whom the people can put their faith. Don't like that word faith. Perhaps there could have been a less equivocative word there. But, definitely not. Definitely not. Do I like people like Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn because of who they are? No. I like them because what they stand for and what they try to push for, and that could come from anyone. It's not about following the person, it's about agreeing with the ideas. So, no. Fearless leaders, leader worship, makes dictatorships. We've seen it so many times. And that is why people who keep miscategorizing communism say that communism is bad, because they ended up with these dictatorship-style regimes where the leader was being worshipped. But that's not actually communism. It's just a manipulation of an idea that turned into dictatorship. It is what's currently going on in North Korea. Not the communism thing, the leader worship thing. Question 9. No sane, normal, decent person could ever think of hurting a close friend or relative. I actually say I agree with that. I mean, I question the phrasing of normal person, but generally speaking, yeah. I know this is a question more about loyalty than anything else, but for the most part, yeah. I mean, if your relative or close friend turns toxic or disowns you or something like that, then you kind of have to cut them out of your life, and that would hurt. But generally speaking, I'm gonna say agree mostly. Because what else are close friends and family for? Like, why would you want to hurt people that you're close to? 10. Nobody ever learned anything really important except through suffering. That sounds horrible. That sounds like an ends justify the means thing. That sounds like an excuse for perpetuating more suffering. And while I think that things that are important have been learned from suffering, let's take the Holocaust as an example, a lot of things came out of that that are useful. I don't want to say good, but definitely useful, like, tools that we have extracted from that knowledge of what happened and everything like that. We are able to look back and say, hey, here's how we can recognize the steps of fascism XYZ. Here's what the Nazis did, and how we can recognize what they did was bad. We can also apply that to our own lives now and say, hey, look, look at what the US is doing across the world. That's pretty damn bad. Look at what Saudi Arabia is doing to Yemen currently. Look at what Israel is doing to Palestine currently. These are parallels with that. So yeah, we can learn a lot through that negative suffering. However, I think there are lots of very important, worthwhile things worth knowing that did not come about through suffering. So we're going to say mostly disagree. 11. What the youth needs. God. The youth. Love that. What the youth needs most is strict discipline, rugged determination, and the will to work and fight for family and country. Oh my God. No. What the youth, TM, needs most is a world that's safe and healthy to grow up in. Boundaries, sure, but not this, like, beat the pussy out of you, beat the queer out of you kind of mentality that I have seen so much that has hurt so many people that then hurts other people and forms this, like, cycle of abuse. Is your country really worth fighting for if it makes you go off and fight in wars that are unjust? You don't get to decide which wars you battle in if you are a ground soldier. Politicians wage wars, soldiers fight wars. So, absolutely not. I disagree strongly. Oh, God, these are so bad. 12. An insult to our honour should always be punished. Disagree strongly. Honour is such a nebulous term. How do you define it? How do you define an insult to it? Like, genuine mistakes can arise from cultural differences. Someone being deliberately obtuse, I would say, probably deserves some form of, not punishment, but some form of consequence, some form of I don't know if punishment is the right word for what that person might deserve. But again, honor is not really worth living and dying and fighting for. Because it's such it's such a vague, made-up term. 13. Sex crimes such as rape and attacks on children deserve more than mere imprisonment. Such criminals ought to be publicly whipped or worse. Ugh. I want to give everyone the chance at rehabilitation. Repeat offenders probably are not going to do that, but some people can, and everyone should be given the chance. Whether imprisonment works or not is something of a different conversation, but the thing is, if someone like that gets found out in prison, they tend to get dealt with quite quickly anyway. I'm not saying that's right or just, but I am saying that it kind of makes public whipping a bit unnecessary. Imprisonment in one country can look very different to imprisonment in another country. I'm going to say disagree somewhat, because I'm not too sure about that. 14. There is hardly anything lower than a person who does not feel a great love, gratitude, and respect for his parents. Oh! Disagree mostly. Most parents are fine. Most parents are great. Some parents are abusive dickholes and do not deserve love, gratitude, or respect. 15. Most of our social problems would be solved if we could somehow get rid of the immoral, crooked, and feeble-minded people. Well, morality is subjective. Crooked, you mean like criminal? If you could stop criminality, that would be great. Feeble-minded, I don't even want to start to think what that could possibly mean, because I'm only hearing it in the negative way of people who have mental disabilities, and that is disgusting to think that they could be got rid of. You can't judge someone objectively on a subjective view of morality. So I will disagree strongly, because like social problems will still exist even without people who, for some, let's just say we can objectively say that those things can be defined. 16. Oh god, I love this. Homosexuals are hardly better than criminals and ought to be severely punished. Strongly disagree. There is nothing criminal about being gay. And there is definitely no need to punish anyone. It is natural. It is just an inbuilt thing that some people have in their brains. That is it. 17. When a person has a problem or worry, it is best for him not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Strongly disagree. That is called repression, and that is seriously unhealthy, as any therapist worth their salt can tell you. My god, that question screams toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity. Not masculinity, toxic masculinity. The masculinity that is toxic. Can't believe we've still got to fucking keep reiterating that. 18. Nowadays, more and more people are prying into matters that should remain personal and private. Ooh, I actually somewhat agree with that. Because of the way that the internet works and the way that social media works, people want to know more and more about the people that they follow, about the celebrities that they like, and sometimes that can be intrusive. Also, I think people like TERFs should get out of trans people's faces when we just want to pee in peace. So I'm going to say agree mostly on that one. 19. Some people are born with an urge to jump from high places. I'm not sure if that means literally. I don't think so, but I'm not really sure what the metaphor is there if it's not literal. I know I'm definitely born with an urge to shy away from high places, to plant my feet firmly on the ground, to grab hold of the fucking grass. If ever I'm at a cliff or anything, I'm like, yes, I will peer from over here at the cliff. Yes, that's very nice. It's a very nice cliff. I'm just gonna crawl on my belly to spread my weight around so that like the cliff doesn't crumble underneath me. Thank you. Would I rather be an alive wuss, or would I rather be a dead brave fucking... No, I think I'd rather just stay alive and be sensible. 20. People can be divided into two distinct classes, the weak and the strong. Not even close. No. Weakness and strength can be defined in very different ways. Mental acuity, physical ability, like emotional integrity. Like, these are all different types of strength. So you cannot define and divide people into clear-cut categories, especially those categories. 21. Someday it will be probably shown that astrology can explain a lot of things. This is interesting because I actually used to believe in astrology. And I think it's been shown as much as it can be shown to explain things, insofar as it explains that people really love to seek patterns and love to attribute supernatural agency to celestial phenomena, and also will believe anything that they're told as long as there's a compliment in there somewhere, and will think that generalized Barnum statements are in fact specific details. So I think astrology has shown us enough about human psychology to be able to tell like how we sort of function and how we tend to rationalize things. But that's not what this question is asking, I don't think. So I'm going to say strongly disagree. Again, as someone who used to believe in astrology and used to see the patterns and say, oh, hey, that totally works for me, without actually then thinking about what it's really saying, because the things that can apply for 1/12 of a population can apply to everyone. 22. Wars and social troubles may someday be ended by an earthquake or flood that will destroy the whole world. No. Natural disasters tend to exacerbate social ills, not solve them. And if something destroys the whole world, well, there won't be any wars or social ills because no one will be alive to do them. So I kind of agree and kind of disagree at the same time with this one. But let's just say for the sake of argument that a natural disaster that affects the whole world doesn't kill off all living life forms. No, I disagree. War and social troubles will not be ended because of it. 23. No weakness or difficulty can hold us back if we have enough willpower. I'm gonna disagree mostly with that one. I think that certain physical limitations will definitely hold us back. You don't even have to think about disability for this one, but disability is a good example of how that would happen. But like, I can't do things that I would like to do. I can't fly. I can't telekinetically draw objects to me because of willpower. Like, physical limitations exist. However, the reason I say disagree mostly and not disagree strongly is because willpower does have an effect on certain things that, you know, you can have the ability to do a certain thing, to push through a certain thing, to do a marathon or fucking hundreds of them, as Eddie Izzard has done. You know, that's willpower pushing through a difficulty. So yeah, that's mostly disagree, but for those sorts of things, yeah, I'll agree to that in that sort of instance. 24. It is best to use some pre-war authorities in Germany to keep order and prevent chaos. You'll have to pretend it's 1946 when you answer this one. Okay. Pre-war authorities to keep order and prevent chaos. That just sounds like authoritarian guards, foot soldiers, whatever you want to call them. People who have more power than they should have over other people. Think about the peacekeepers in the Hunger Games. Think about the SS in real life. I don't think authority is the thing that stops war. I think authority is the thing that causes it. Disagree strongly. 25. Most people don't realise how much our lives are controlled by plots hatched in secret places. Okay, this question is about conspiracy theories. The Illuminati, the stonecutters, the stonemasons, the stone fuckers. It's impossible to know. But I think people who let themselves be controlled by the conspiracy theories are not actually able to enjoy their lives properly, and that's really sad. I used to know someone like this. He was very big on the whole Illuminati thing. It was actually quite distressing to see him sort of destroy himself over this. But saying that, there are instances of dodgy deals in secret backrooms happening pretty much all the time in government. So it's the people in power doing it, not the people behind the people in power, if you get what I mean. I'll agree somewhat. 26. Human nature being what it is, there will always be war and conflict. Unfortunately, I think that's true. Agree mostly. However, I do also think that we can and have the ability to, like, strive to be better than that. I'm agreeing more because I'm cynical, not because I'm wanting it to be that way. 27. Familiarity breeds contempt. I don't think so. I mean, sometimes, but people tend to like familiarity. People tend to gravitate towards familiarity a lot more than they reject it. Agree somewhat. Because it does happen sometimes, especially in like long-term marriages when people drift apart or like argue more. But at the same time, like, some marriages last until the couples are well into their like 90s and going to the same like nursing home together. So 28. Nowadays, when so many different kinds of people move around and mix together as much, a person has to protect himself especially carefully against catching an infection or disease from them. You saying different people are diseased? 'Cause that sounds like xenophobia to me. Ironically, I am saying this as we're still dealing with a worldwide pandemic that's, spread from China. So, I'm gonna disagree somewhat. And the reason for that is you do have to protect yourself against infection or disease from other people, because people, like all people, are potential infection carriers. I really take issue with the wording that says nowadays. Plagues and pandemics have existed and surfaced throughout history. It's not a modern thing. "29. The wild sex life of the old Greeks and Romans was tame compared to some of the goings-on in this country, even when in places where people might least expect it." When you've got conservative politicians trying to bang 17-year-olds behind their wife's back, using public funding, like manipulating young people. I don't think it's necessarily wrong for someone to sleep with an adult to sleep with a 17-year-old, but I do think it's wrong to manipulate that person into sleeping with you. The Greeks had a lot of gay stuff going on because it strengthened the bonds between men who work together and fight together and women who work together and, do their chores together and things. Romans, orgies, yeah, vomitoriums, sure. I'd say it's about the same, really. And I'm guessing when it says this country, it actually means the US, not my country. I'm gonna disagree, because I think they're about the same, not less or more shocking or tame, as it puts it. So I say disagree somewhat. 30. The true American way of life is disappearing so fast that force may be necessary to preserve it. Fuck your American way of life. Your American way of life is selling you burgers you don't need, cars you don't need, bombs that are going to kill the world, guns that you don't need. Like, America is a corporation that's trying to sell its own people shit that they do not need, at the expense of the world, at the expense of natural resources, at the expense of other people, other countries' peace. But I know exactly what this question means. It means foreign people coming into the country and bringing all their cultures and customs with them, and the American way of life is getting pushed by the wayside to include all of that stuff. Good! Good. Your way of life is built upon imperialism, genocide, slavery. Fuck that way of life. Fuck that entirely. Force may be necessary to preserve it? No. Fucking get rid of it. I'm going to fail this F test so hard. Your overall F score is 2.03. You are a liberal airhead. Because of course it says it like that. Because, you can't just have a disagreement with a fash. They have to jab in an insult there to prove their own superiority. Fuck off. Scores for personality variables, all really, really low. Oh, I scored fairly high on the destructiveness and cynicism. But other than that, they're all fairly low. Well, anyway, kiddos, that was fun. Didn't we learn a lot about fascism? Honestly, though, this sounds like it was written by some fucking toxic twat on 8chan or something like that, because some of these questions didn't even make a lot of sense. They were very vague. And I'm glad that I failed the F test. I'm glad that I'm not fash enough to be a fash. So, cool. Okay, everyone. I hope you've had fun. I'll leave a link to the test, see if you want to take it yourself. And yeah. Non-binary is valid, goddammit. Fascism is not valid. So, yeah. Bye. Thanks, Grindr. It is just an inbuilt thing that... Dead coward. Dead coward. Note to future editing self, insert the word pontificate into that scene.